Hello, everyone. We welcome to the session for DocuSign Monitor API for SIEM and BI tools. My name is Abhijit Salvi. I'm a Senior Director of Product Management at DocuSign. And I have here with me Brian Eckley, our Senior Software Engineer. What we are going to talk to you about two things. One is we'll walk through the overview about the DocuSign Monitor product. We'll give you a demo of the Monitor APIs, how easy they are to integrate to a third-party application. And lastly, we'll answer any questions that you might have. The reason why we built the DocuSign Monitor product is because our customers had expressed the need to get greater visibility into their account activities. In recent times, we have had, you would have heard of situations where there are security threats and data breaches at several organizations like SolarWinds, Colonial Pipeline, etc. These threats originated externally as well as internally. Customers like you trust us with some of the most confidential information in your business, and that is your agreements, your contracts. We want to ensure that these are secure and only people with the right privileges, the right permissions can access them. That is where DocuSign Monitor comes into play. With Monitor, our customers get greater visibility into their user and account level activities across different geographical locations, across the different accounts that they have. They are empowered with all the critical information that gives them an oversight across the DocuSign environment and the peace of mind that they can track what activities are happening at any given point of time. DocuSign Monitor comes with advanced analytical algorithms. They are powered to do pattern matching. So it helps us identify what is normal behavior for a specific user and what are the potential abnormal behaviors, outliers for that user. And using the pattern matching algorithm and the pre-programmed alerts, we are able to identify anomalies that we trigger automatic alerts for. These alerts are received by the security administrator, the IT operations lead, or the DocuSign administrators. And once they receive that threat, they can quickly get to investigating that threat. They can slice and dice the data. DocuSign Monitor comes equipped with all the necessary mechanisms that let you do that so that you can get to the bottom of that anomaly, identify the root cause of that security threat. Once you have verified that threat, you can respond quickly to that threat thanks to the recommended actions that DocuSign Monitor provides. So effectively, it's an end-to-end tool that lets you identify the risks and mitigate the damage from those risks. DocuSign Monitor comes equipped with more than 50 plus events. These are across the e-signature landscape. As you can see, they're across three major categories. So we have login and login failures or login or access abnormalities like multiple login failures, or if a user gets locked out of the failed login attempts, or things like simultaneous login, which is when a user logs in from, say, Seattle, but 2 hours later, if they log in from Paris, we'll identify that as an anomaly and let you know through an alert that this is something suspicious that is going on. In addition to that, we also have account or user level change settings. If those get changed, we help you track those changes through DocuSign Monitor. So these would be where a large number of users get inactivated, or somebody goes in and gives themselves org admin privileges, or a critical admin or security setting like recipient authentication. If that gets changed, we'll can help you track that through DocuSign Monitor. And then the last category is data exfiltration. So this is where if a large number of envelopes get sent by a user or a large number of envelopes get deleted, that could potentially be a disgruntled employee who's trying to sabotage your agreement repository or is trying to siphon away with a lot of your confidential information. And you don't want that to happen. Again, Monitor helps you stay on top of that game. In addition to these events, we also have pre-programmed alerts. These pre-programmed alerts will automatically trigger notifications when any of the conditions are met. So we have alerts for things like multiple login failure attempts, or bulk events like bulk user export or bulk account settings export, or critical security settings like recipient authentication, or data exfiltration attempts like a large number of envelopes getting deleted. These alerts let you know what kind of activity has been noticed, which users' actions triggered that alert. In addition to that, we also have information in terms of where did those activities originate from. what were the IP addresses that were in question, what was the time when these activities actually were executed, or what device, operating system, or browser type was used to perform those transactions. All of this information is crucial for a security administrator or an IT operations lead or DocuSign admin to verify the threat and take action on it. Now, all of this is available through our Monitor UI, and it's available as part of the org admin, within the org admin. But a number of our customers want to integrate and consume these events and alerts in their third-party application. So it could be an existing security stack that they might have. So it can be Splunk Enterprise or a SIEM system like a Logarithm or Sumo Logic. You can use the Monitor REST APIs to integrate to that third-party application. And these are very easy to consume, as Brian will show you. And once you have integrated these events and alerts, you can create your own custom dashboards that fit your own specific business needs and get a view into the comprehensive account activity. To tell you more about how the Monitor APIs can be consumed, I will hand over to Brian. Brian, over to you.
Thanks, Abhi, so much for the DocuMonitor project overview. My name is Brian Yeckley, and I'm a senior software engineer on the DocuSign Monitor team. And I would love to demonstrate our API and how easy it is to integrate with for your SIEM or any other integration. So first of all, our Monitor's API is documented on the DocuSign developer website. If you go to APIs here, we're the second one right there. Just click Monitor API. Once you're in here, you'll see there's lots of good advice here. There's API 101, complete with a video walkthrough. And here there's some code samples. We'll go through a lot more detail in code later, but this is a nice quick starter here. And then there's also the user guide, which has everything I'm about to talk about in a lot of detail in there. Definitely a good place to start. So now that we've come in here to look at the API, let's just go to the reference, and you can see the Monitor API category, and we only have one endpoint. It's called GetStream, and it's a streaming endpoint. So it's meant to be called indefinitely, just with like brief rests between each call, and just consuming all the events and alerts that we have. You make the call, you get a lot of events back, you wait, and then you make the call again, supplying a checkpoint to start where you left off last time. So let's take a look at this one. So in here, you'll see there's two parameters that we support. There's the cursor, which is the checkpoint I mentioned. If you omit this, it just starts at the beginning of time for us. So the first call, you don't need to pass that in, it's optional. And then in the response, you'll get the next cursor to continue with. The limit is the maximum number of events and alerts you want to return, up to 2,000. For demoing, I'll largely stick with just one, just so we can get a nice readable payload here. All right, so now that I've shown you the reference, let's demonstrate this in API in Postman. So calling the Monitor API is kind of a two-step process. The first one is the same for basically any integration across DocuSign, and that is to authenticate. We only support the JWT authentication method. So I'll briefly walk you through that, and then we'll go over a little more in code. But when you're doing that, you're going to want to supply the JWT token, which I've gone ahead and pre-made one. I'll show you how to make one in more detail in a little bit. But once I have my token, I will go ahead and call the OAuth endpoint with the JWT bearer grant type, and I will send this. And then on my response, I'll get an access token. Now, once I have this access token, we're good to do the second step of our integration, which is called the DocuSign Monitor API. And that's referred to as Lens, and that's all in our documentation. And you can see when I call it, I'm only putting a limit of 1. I'm not supplying a cursor, so we'll get the first event available for us. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to delete this old bearer token, and I'm going to put the new one I just copied with a limit of 1. And we'll go ahead and execute that. And the first thing you notice is we got a new cursor back. I'll show you how to use that momentarily. But also we got an array of events, in this case only one. The most important thing in here is probably the object in action, which tells you exactly what happened for this event. In this case, someone updated the account, specifically the property of security policy. And what they updated is setting the recipient authentication settings to optional. So data is where you're going to store that type of value. We also log valuable stuff such as the user agent, and then we can extract from the user agent which browser and OS they're using. So that'll come in here on the user agent client info, and the IP address, which we then also extract the location from. So you can see this event was emitted from a user in Seattle, Washington. So now that we have an example response, we can make this request again. And as I mentioned, we want to give it a checkpoint so it knows not to give us this event back, but the next one in sequence. So I'll go ahead and grab this end cursor. I'll go to the params. I will check the cursor box and put that one in. So this time when I execute, we'll get the next event in line, which is also updating the setting, this time to optional. So same thing, same amount of data in here and all that. So, and then once again, we get another checkpoint, and you can keep iterating over these as you go, and you'll get new events. Now they set it to never. So someone is toggling the recipient authentication settings button there. All right, now that we've seen that in Postman, let's go ahead and do a code walkthrough, and we can talk about how to actually make an integration. So first thing to say is there's a blog entry on the DocuSign developer blog called Integrate the DocuSign Monitor API into your SIEM. I will be using code entirely from this blog. So if you want to follow along or do this yourself, just go to this blog, and all the code is in here for you to copy paste, which is all I'm doing as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is the JWT authentication and how you need to authenticate. So there's a few prerequisites you're going to need. The first one being when you set up your user, your administrator here, you're going to need to make an org administrator that is either the full admin or the security reports administrator. Either of those two are going to be able to make DocuSign Monitor API request. The next thing you're going to want to do is go to your account admin and go to apps and keys, and you're going to want to add a new integration key, which is just like a key that lets you make requests and identify the app that's doing it. So we'll call it Developer Conference Demo. And one important thing, when you make it, be sure to generate your RSA key pair. And we only show it to you once, so make sure you write these down somewhere because you will not be able to retrieve them later. So once you have your key and your RSA key pair, the next step is what we call granting consent. And that's documented in this blog as well. And I'm not going to go through this because it's quite detailed, but it is here. And I just wanted to show you that when you do DocuSign Monitor, the scope that you're required to grant consent on is impersonation. And then I'll show you how all these are used in just a moment. So you made your user, you've made your key, you've granted the impersonation scope. You're good to start making requests. So first thing, let's go look at the code. And this little example will be in Python, just because it's pretty easy to work with for this. And I recommend just putting all your configs in just one object to store them. So here's all the things we just talked about. The first thing you're going to need is your RSA private key. That's what's used to encode the JWT token. The next one's the integrator key, or the integration key that you just made. In our case, is developer conference demo one. And then the user ID of your org admin. You can get this in our admin tool. And then these three URLs, they're all documented, but they're the same. This is all for the demo environment. If you're doing prod environment, you can just remove the -d. And the limit is how many we want. Again, I'm only doing one for the demo purposes, but you can go up to 2,000. So now we have all these values. Let's look at how these are actually used. We'll be using the Python JWT library to do this. And then here's where we import the config we just made. So the first thing we want to do is construct the JWT using the values from the config. So these are all documented as the required ones we need. There's the issuer, which is our integrator key, the AUD, which is our authentication host, and then when this token begins and when it expires, in this case, 3,600 seconds later. And then before we mention the scope you granted consent on, you want to put that here, impersonation. If you're doing multiple scopes, which we talk about later, you just do a space separated list, like so. And then the subscriber is the user ID. So now we have the claim set up. We're going to use the JWT library to encode that, and that's where we use the RSA key we put in there using the RS-256 algorithm. So now that we have that, just as we did in Postman earlier on this authenticate, in the body, we're going to just put it in here, our token, and then the grant type, which is just a static string for JWT token. And when we run it, you will see an access token returned, similar to Postman. And here it is. I'm going to go ahead and copy this off for the next step. So we have gotten an authentication token that will last 3,600 seconds. You want to do this every request because these can't be alive forever. We do enforce a timeout on it. So the next step in the process, same as Postman, was when we did the actual monitor request. So we'll go in here to request events. We're going to use the config again and the Python request library. So let's go ahead and put the access token we just got. All right, let's go back over. And here's the headers. It's our bearer token. And we use the monitor URL and then the fetch limit of 1. We are not supplying a cursor, so it's just going to give us the first one available. And then once we get it, the data is the array element, as you'll see here. With all the data in here, we're just going to loop and print them out. Let's go here. All right, the first thing we got, as you saw before, was this updated security policy one. So same as you see in Postman. So now we've got this going in Python. I just want to call out where we're printing here. This is kind of your entry point into your SIEM software integration. I'll demo a Splunk one later, but this is the point where if you're doing like a Splunk HTTP event collector, you're going to want to like post into Splunk or call whatever SIEM's SDK is, so you can just kind of push that data over. All right, so now we've authenticated, now we've made the request. Let's talk about that cursor and put it all together. So here's the full version of the script where I have now decided to read the cursor right here from a text file, which is empty. And then we're going to pass that on in our request URL, which right here. So we'll pass it on as a parameter, cursor. And then, same thing, we're going to loop through and just print these out. But we're also going to grab the end cursor in this one and then persist it back to disk. So this whole thing, for your integration, you're pretty much going to want to just call it on a timer, some sort of like cron job or however it works with your SIEM of choice. And just keep doing this perpetually, maybe rest for a minute or two between. You don't want to do it too frequently, or you won't get many events. So let's go ahead and execute that. We'll notice there's no cursor, so I'll run the whole thing. We should get that same event again because we reset the cursor. And here we got the new one. So when we call it again, we can just keep calling this now. One more time. We'll get the second optional one, and then the third one, we updated the cursor again, and then this just to mimic what we saw in Postman. The next one should be the never. There we go, we got the never. So we're just iterating through. And again, we only put one in for demo purposes, but you could certainly get a lot more. Here's like 100, so you can just see they all come back in a big array. So here's the next 100 events. And now the cursor says, this is where we left off. We'll do this all again. So that's basically the integration. You notice we did it in just about 58 lines of code, generously, line broke here. So pretty simple and straightforward. The next thing I wanted to talk about though, is when we did this, you'll notice the user ID is like a UID, the account ID, same thing. Let me find that one. Oh, in this case, it's organization, but here, let me look here. Easier to read. yeah, account IDs or IDs. So you're probably going to want the real values for those in your SIEM software. And this is documented on my blog as well. Back, under the extending the data thing. So using that access token, you should be able to also call a users list endpoint and an accounts list endpoint. And then with that data, you can save those off. But you probably want to call those less frequently because those don't change as often, once a day or once a few hours. And then you can save it off and join your data with the events, and then fill in the usernames, account names, and stuff like that. And I'll show you that in Splunk in a little bit. The only thing to mention there is if you are getting the account names, you will need to grant an additional consent organization read. So when you're making your integration, just do this, and you'll have the access token to be able to call both of those endpoints. All right, now that I've showed you how to extend it, let me walk you through one integration that we've built for you already, which is the Splunk one. So if I go to Splunk base, and I can just search for DocuSign on here, you'll see two apps we have built already for you. The first one is the Monitor add-on. This is the app that you're going to put on your heavy forwarder or similar, and it just ingests all the data. So you configure your data inputs. We do 3 for monitor, users, and accounts that we join up all later. And you plug in essentially the same fields from this config right into the integration in Splunk, and it goes. The other one is the monitor dashboards, and this is all your visualizations, your charts, your graphs, and then things like block list, allow list, and alert severity management, which I'll show you. So once you've got these installed, here's a pretty fresh Splunk where I have them installed. As you can come in and configure them, and the add-on's the one you're going to want to do first. So we click on that, and then we can go to the input configuration, which is where we actually set up the data ingestion. And you'll see I've already done the accounts and users just to get that data flowing for the demo. But I don't have a monitor one yet. So let me go ahead. I'll click Add Monitor Input. And you can just call this whatever you want. All right. And these are the same fields you noticed from the config. We're just going to copy them right back into here. So user ID, integrator key. Oops. And then lastly, the RSA private key. Mine has line breaks in it, so I've pulled it out here just to make it easier. And we'll do it there. These are pre-populated with what they should be, the demo environments. You can put your fetch limit here. Yeah, we can do 1,000, sure. And then under more settings, this is the interval which it runs. The default 300 seconds. You can certainly change that to be faster. And then you're going to want to supply whatever index you want. In my case, it's the default, which will be main. And you can override the source type if you want, but we have it defaulted to DocuSign Monitor. So once I hit next, it saves that data input, and it's going to start ingesting right away. So if I come back to the Monitor add-on, you can go look at the input health, and you can see a history of all the runs, like for the account ones, the user one, the monitor one, and you can just see if they're healthy, how many times they're executing, if there are any errors and warnings. Good, that's empty right now. Success. And now that data's in here, we can just go ahead and search. It's going to backfill for a little bit because I didn't put in, it starts with an empty cursor. Let me do last 7 days. And look, it already found my source type. Go ahead and execute that. And here you'll see the same thing we saw in Postman and Python. It's just ingested into Splunk now, and it's all indexed, so you can search on it. You can see like which actions we found, modified, created, null, which objects are being active a lot of event ones going on, envelope ones, and so on. So now you let this data go. We also have the users ones and the accounts. There you go. And when you write your Splunk query, you can just join right here on this user ID and display the email if you want, so that it's something more readable. And that's really how the add-on works, the modular input thing. So the next thing I want to show you though is the app. See if you remember back at Splunk base. Oops. We have the monitor dashboards one. This is what we call the app. So let's go ahead and go in here. And this is where we tie it all together for you. And we have some basic dashboards for you to look at that you can modify to do exactly what your business needs to do. But we have a good starting point. So first off, just the overview. This one's just going to show you like, oh, how many users do you have in the system? How many of them are administrators? How many alerts have fired in the last 30 days? 54. Like how many envelopes signed and so on. And we use that geolocation data I mentioned earlier. You can see there's a lot of events in the Seattle area, got some in the Chicago area. And then you can see all the events coming through. What are the top ones? Like envelope created is our most popular one, and then sent, makes sense. And then all these different updates. And this is where we join with those other data sets. Now you can see who's doing the most. You got these different users. These are their names, their email, and so on. And then there's a lot more dashboards to look at. This is the overview. We have specific ones just for alerts, users, block list. And then we have investigator ones. Like you can start digging into envelope investigator and see who's signing, who's sending envelopes, what's happening. And it'll do it all by user. So you can get the actual username. Yeah, so you can see here's all the last action. You can see the created, deleted, sent. And then here's the raw data underneath. And then one thing I want to talk about in here was the block list thing I mentioned earlier. If you go to your IP, you can block on IP and country. It doesn't block the traffic, but what it will do is it'll show you if any events are emitting from countries or IPs that you have blocked. So if you go into the IP lookup, you can add a row. We don't have any here right now, but you can add a row and just check, blocked true or false. Same with country. Go in here, and you can say, oh, I want to block all events from one particular country. List. So false, use update that to true using your lookup editor of choice. And then when you come into the block list overview, we don't have any blocked at the moment, but it'll show you the source, like where is it coming from, IP or country, and it's going to show you which users are doing this, and so on. It's going to give you all sorts of valuable information to look into that. And the other thing I wanted to show you is if you go to the alert overview, you can configure, alerts have different meanings to different companies. You can configure yours low, medium, high. Like maybe someone messing with password rules is a high, but someone downloading a lot of documents is a low for you. That's typical traffic. So the way we can handle that is you come into this lookup, you go to the alert lookup, and you can just define the value. Let me submit. Right in here. So there's the high, medium, and low. And as we add alerts, we can add them in here as well. We're always adding new ones every release. And that's really it with the Splunk. So I hope you learned a lot about this and learned how easy it is to integrate with. And if you have any questions, please ask. I'll be around here with Abhi to help answer any questions. Thank you so much.
I think some questions are coming in. We got a question. Can DocuSign Monitor be integrated with any SIEM or third-party application? Brian, do you want to take that?
Sure, yeah. DocuSign Monitor can definitely be integrated with any SIEM or third-party application, kind of using the steps you just saw. It's an API, so any sort of any SIEM that allows like an external integration or data input, you'll be able to do it. What I demoed was more for like geared towards Splunk with a modular input, but there's also other methods like a HTTP event collector, and in your integration you'll be able to just fire it off wherever you need the event to go. Thanks.
Okay, we got one more question. what does it take to get Monitor set up? So DocuSign Monitor as the product is pretty turnkey by nature. The web application is something that you would be able to start using from day one. So the moment you buy DocuSign Monitor licenses and it's enabled for you, you would be able to, as a customer, by self-service, enable DocuSign Monitor in your org, in your environment. That will get you the DocuSign Monitor web application, and you would be able to start seeing the events and alerts flowing into the DocuSign Monitor tool by itself. You don't have to do anything to get that going. Of course, when you have to consume the DocuSign Monitor events and alerts into a third-party application, so it can be your SIEM environment or your data visualization platform like Tableau or Power BI, there is an integration that would be needed. If you want to integrate it with a SIEM system like Splunk Enterprise or Splunk Cloud, we have our Splunk app ready. It's published to the Splunk base, and you can download and install the DocuSign Monitor Splunk app from there. And by just pure configuration, you would be able to get our events and alerts integrated into the Splunk Enterprise and Splunk Cloud environments. For any other SIEM system or a third-party data visualization platform, you can consume our DocuSign Monitor APIs. These are REST APIs. And we have a ton of documentation available on our developer center, our user guide, or even through our DocuSign Monitor blogs that you can use to set all of that up. Again, feel free to ask any additional questions that you might have. We are here to answer any of those questions. So we had got a question about the roadmap for DocuSign Monitor. And as we responded earlier on, our focus for Monitor is to make it more smarter. We want to make sure that we use AI machine learning algorithms to be able to better detect pattern matchings, be able to detect outliers, malicious activities, and be able to report them to our customers, security administrators in near real time. So that's going to be our number one priority. In addition to that, we would be able to enable additional events and alerts across the entire DocuSign Agreement Cloud. That's going to be our focus for the next 6 to 12 months. And in addition to that, a number of our customers have been asking us for additional flexibility, additional configurability, where they would be able to create their, configure their alerts, be able to configure the widgets on their dashboards so that it meets their very specific business needs. So that will be the third focus area. In addition to that, we will also have other priorities in terms of additional capabilities within a Monitor, be able to configure a much more better configurable API feed. That's something that we would also provide through Monitor in the next few releases. So we got a new question. Can we set up alerts for when users log in from IPs outside a set range? So that's a capability that we are enabling within our DocuSign Monitor. What we would call it is a safe list. So customers will be able to create a safe list and be able to then get alerts if any user logs in from beyond that safe list of IP address ranges. So that's a capability that is coming down the pipeline. It will be enabled in the next few releases. That capability currently already exists within our Splunk app. So through our Splunk app, we also provide you a capability to block list a certain set of IP address ranges or geolocations. And using that, you would automatically get alerts anytime a user logs in from that block list set of IP address ranges. So that's hopefully answers your question. A lot of DocuSign Monitor information, documentation is available on our DocuSign website. Do check out our DocuSign Monitor webpage on DocuSign.com. We have the DocuSign Monitor user guide in our on our DocuSign support site, and then all the Monitor API documentation, including the code samples that Brian and the team have built, are available on our DocuSign Developer Center. Is the recorded version of this session available in the community after the conference? Yes, we would have that available, and you would be able to kind of share that and be able to review it offline as well. So we got a question. Does monitor cover sub accounts, or can Splunk ingest monitor data from more than one enterprise account? So DocuSign Monitor is enabled at the org level, so it will provide you visibility across all your sub accounts. That's something that DocuSign Monitor actually specializes and is a value add for many of our customers. And then the second part of the question was, can Splunk ingest monitor data from more than one DocuSign enterprise account? I think that should be the case. Brian, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so yeah, much like what you said before, it ingests data at the organization level, so it's going to get all the data for the sub accounts under that organization. And on top of that, there's no restrictions from ingesting data from multiple organizations as well, if you happen to be in such an arrangement. Should work fine.
Looks like we are almost at the top of the hour anyways. So again, thank you everyone for joining this session. We had a really great pleasure sharing the DocuSign Monitor product with you, sharing more details about the API and how you can integrate it with other SIEM and BI tools. Thanks for joining us today, and hope you enjoy the rest of the DocuSign Developer Conference. Bye.
Yeah.